That's true. So the current paradigm in science worldwide is still the materialist paradigm. And what is true in science is what we can objectify, what we can measure, what we can duplicate, and what we can falsify. Now, consciousness, what we think and what we feel, the content of consciousness, we cannot objectify, we cannot measure, we cannot duplicate it, we cannot falsify. These subjective experiences in our consciousness are beyond the current materialist paradigm in science. So if we want to understand the near-death experiences, then you have to expand science into an all-inclusive science as well, to include subjective experiences. So perhaps first, what is a near-death experience? What is it? So it's the reported memory of a period of enhanced consciousness with some universal elements like the idea of being dead, having an out-of-body experience with the perception out and above the body and seeing your own resuscitation of your own surgery. You can come in a dark space. For some people, it's frightening as well. And then you see a small light where you're attracted to, which most people describe as a tunnel. And then you come in another worldly realm with beautiful colors, beautiful landscapes, meeting deceased relatives, and usually meeting a light or a being of light with the feeling of unconditional love, the universal wisdom. And with this being of light, you have a life review, you relive again everything what you have done, what you have said, and what you have thought. So each thought you ever had is kept. And you, in this life review, you also are connected with the consciousness of other people in the past. So when you took some plaything from your small sister, you know how sad she was. You know how sad she was. And you also have possibilities to have a flash forward to see future events in your life. And then you come to a border, and you know when I cross this border, I will never come back. And usually you hear a voice of these relatives of the being of light that it's not your time yet. You have to go back. And you have the conscious returning in the body, which is awful. But it's awful for them. And this kind of near-death experience occurs in cardiac arrest, clinical death, which can also occur in loss of blood in complicated childbirth in young women. It can happen in a traffic accident, in coma. It can happen near drowning in children. But also near-death-like experiences can also happen in existential crisis, in severe depression, meditation, isolation, or also in end-of-life, what is called end-of-life experiences or deathbed visions. So all these kind of experiences are spiritual, transformative experiences.
And I mean, in that context, it is quite interesting, isn't it? I mean, if you had never heard of a near-death experience, maybe just had some religious faith, you would hope that perhaps you might live on. But living on would be extraordinary and good enough. But in these NDEs, people have these very beautiful colors and the extraordinarily beautiful music and wonderful experiences. I mean, I suppose I'm asking you to speak on behalf of God, so perhaps that's not fair, but why is it so wonderful? I mean, it's more wonderful than the best drugs, isn't it?
But people tell me, and I've spoken to hundreds or thousands of people, and I have thousands of emails from all over the world to people who share the NDE with me. They tell me they felt this was home. This was more real than real. When they were back in the body, they say this physical world is just an illusion. Reality is there. And there I feel love and unconditional love, and that's home. And that's where I came from. I never talk about life after life. I just talk about the continuity of consciousness, because life is a biological system, the cell divisions, the metabolisms, etc. But when your body dies, in my opinion now, and it took really a while to accept it, it's a continuity of consciousness.
Yes. Yes, of course. And that consciousness for you is, I mean, we're slightly getting into the physics here, but it is non-local. I mean, you've borrowed that term from quantum physics, haven't you? The notion of non-locality.
Yeah,
That's very important to your theory.
it's an analogy with quantum physics. Quantum physics does not explain consciousness.
Right.
But when you talk to people and explain to me what happened in their consciousness, then they could see the past with all details. They could see the future with all and they all see it at the same moment. When you have a cardiac arrest for 2 minutes, you can talk for 1 week what happened in your consciousness during those 2 minutes. And when the moment you think on someone, you will be there. You think on some place, you will be there at the same moment. So there is no time, no space, and everything is instantaneously connected. That's why near-death experience also are called experience of oneness. You feel connected with everything and everybody. They still have a part of your personality as well.
Of course. And thinking of you, your personality, the experiencer, I mean, one of the things we're going to get onto is how much consciousness creates reality. Of course, there are plenty of Buddhists who will tell you that consciousness is creating reality right now. And like you, I'm very attracted to panpsychism, whereby consciousness is sort of primary. But in that case, is that thing about I'm rather interested in beauty, is that thing about the great beauty of the other side, that you are creating it, and of course, for once you're free to create it in any way you like, so naturally you create it at the very best.
Well, the main thing is that the near-death experience is an ineffable experience. So there are no words for it. So when people try to put it into words or to give it to understand it, then they use the words from their own culture, from their own religion. And so children will use different words as adults. And Christians will use different words from atheists or Buddhists. But they try to say the same thing. But at last they say, but I cannot put it into words as well. But all these elements they talk about are universal elements, but they use different words for it. And not all near-death experiences are positive. I think about 15% of the patients who have a positive near-death experience have a frightening moment when they are in the dark space before they enter the light. And there are also people who just stay there in the dark room or go down, like a hellish or frightening experience. We don't know exactly how many times this happens, because people who have a positive NDE usually are silent for years about it. When you have a negative or hellish or frightening NDE, even more right to don't talk about it. But I think you create aspects of your death experiences by your consciousness. But the same is true for now as we're sitting here. So the reality we experience outside in this physical world is depending on our consciousness. When we are in love, the world is beautiful. When we are depressed, the world is awful. When we are frightened because of the press and the politicians, we live in a hell as well. So the same world we experience depending on our own consciousness, and it's the same for the death experiences as well.
Is there a very slight difference between saying that, which I think a lot of people are now beginning to see, that consciousness in some sense creates reality on the one hand, that's you as an individual, and then reality, and the insistence which you make, which we also agree with, I think, that the NDE gives you access to transpersonal and even transcendent experiences, which makes it sound as though the people you meet in a transpersonal experience, or the being of light you meet in a transcendent experience, I mean, in a sense, you're then saying that those things are really there and are not merely a creation of you. I mean, you're not a solipsist.
No. There are two aspects. Let's say when you're in your body, when you have your waking consciousness, that's just a part of the non-local consciousness. And to understand how this works is, first of all, this non-local consciousness beyond time and beyond space is always there. I would like to compare the brain with a computer, with the interface. So a transceiver or interface, like a computer. So when you think of your mobile phone, there are 400,000 telephone calls now going through the room where you're sitting now. That you need a functioning phone to get one people on the phone. And the same is for your television set or radio. A lot of programs now, but you need a functioning radio or TV set to have one program. But when you put off your set, all the programs are still there. And I compare non-local consciousness most with the iCloud. So the internet with 1 billion websites and YouTube videos are always there, also now going through us, through our buildings, through walls, etc. But you need a functioning computer to find some aspects of this cloud where you're looking for. So also your personal waking consciousness is just a part of this non-local consciousness, where everything is there, where the past and future is available. And the brain just has not a producing function, but a facilitating function or a filter function. So you don't receive, under normal circumstances, all the information which is available. But what is interesting to see that I didn't talk until now about the transformation. So there are 3 aspects of transformation, which we found also in a longitudinal study. A taped interview 2 years and 8 years after the cardiac arrest, but all survivors of cardiac arrest with an NDE, and a matched control group of patients who survived cardiac arrest without any memory, to see if the transformation is due to the cardiac arrest or due to the near-death experience. And what we found, that the 3 classical transformations, the loss of the fear of death, belief in an afterlife. A new insight was important in life. It's all about empathy and compassion and love. First towards yourself. Accept who you are, accept all the negative aspects you all have. And then have compassion and empathy towards others and towards nature, because they feel connected with everybody else and with nature as well. And the third aspect is the enhanced intuitive sensitivity. They know what other people think and feel. They know that someone will die in 3 weeks and they will really die. So they have access to what I call to non-local information exchange. That they know things not by the senses and not by the body, but another way. So the filter function of the brain has permanently changed. We did not only receive channel 1, your own consciousness, but channel 2, 3, 4, and 5 of people of other people they receive. So the transpersonal aspects, you have much more access to it because the changing of your brain function, of the filter function.